The wind moved first, low, steady, whispering through the buffalo grass like something alive. Then came the silence, the kind that settles before violence. In June of 1874, at a lonely trading post known as Second Battle of Adobe Walls, a small group of buffalo hunters found themselves surrounded by hundreds of Comanche and allied warriors, outnumbered, outmatched, and pinned down behind crude walls. Survival came down to distance. Among them stood Billy Dixon, a man with a heavy rifle and a problem no quick draw could solve. He raised his 5D-90 Sharps, its long barrel cutting across the heat waves rising off the plains. Nearly a mile away, a lone warrior sat on horseback, just within sight, but far beyond what most men would even attempt. This wasn't a duel. It wasn't fast. It was patience, calculation, and a little bit of desperation. Dixon pulled the trigger. The shot echoed long after the smoke drifted away, and somehow, impossibly, it found its mark. The distant rider fell, and just like that, the momentum shifted. The attackers hesitated. Doubt crept in. Because if a man could be hit from that far away, nowhere was safe. This is where the myth begins to crack. Forget the spinning revolvers and hip-fired showdowns. The real West wasn't fought at arm's length. It was fought across open land, where survival depended on who could see farther, aim steadier, and strike first. So the question isn't just how Dixon made that shot, it's whether men like him were something more, not gunslingers, but something closer to ghosts in the grass. If you want to understand how a man could hit a target nearly a mile away, you have to start with the tool in his hands, because not all guns in the Old West were created equal. Hollywood loves the lever-action rifle, especially the legendary Winchester model, 1873. Fast, reliable, and perfect for close encounters. But here's the truth, most people don't realize the standard 4440 cartridge it fired was basically a pistol round stretched into a rifle. It was deadly at close range, sure, but beyond 150 yards, it started to lose power fast. The bullet dropped, slowed, and became wildly unpredictable. For long-distance shooting, it was practically useless. Now compare that to the giants of the plains, the buffalo rifles. Weapons like the Sharps 590 or the Remington rolling block weren't built for speed, they were built for reach. These rifles fired massive lead slugs, heavy enough to carry lethal force across incredible distances. A skilled marksman could place a shot hundreds of yards away with terrifying consistency. But hitting that far wasn't just about power, it was about precision. Early telescopic sights, like the Malcolm scopes, existed, but they were fragile and rare. Most shooters relied on vernier tang sights, carefully adjusting elevation by hand, estimating distance with nothing but experience and instinct. And then there was the smoke. Black powder didn't just fire a bullet. It revealed you one shot, and your position bloomed into a cloud, visible for seconds. If you missed, you didn't get a quick second chance. You had to relocate, recalibrate, and rethink. Because out here, every shot was a commitment, and every mistake had consequences. Long before the idea of a sniper had a name, there were men on the plains doing exactly that. Only they didn't call it warfare, they called it work. The buffalo hunter wasn't chasing animals on horseback in some dramatic pursuit. He was lying still, often hundreds of yards away, watching through the heat shimmer as an entire herd grazed unaware. This was a profession built on patience and precision. A good hunter didn't fire wildly. He chose his moment, picked his target, and made it count. They called it making a stand. The hunter would set up at a distance, usually downwind, and position himself carefully. Cross sticks, simple wooden supports acting like an early bipod, held the heavy rifle steady. The barrel, often long and octagonal, helped absorb recoil and manage heat, allowing for repeated, deliberate shots. Then came the critical decision. The first target, instead of aiming for the closest animal, experienced hunters would drop the lead buffalo or a key member of the herd. If done correctly, the rest wouldn't immediately panic. They'd mill around, confused rather than fleeing, giving the hunter time to fire again and again, sometimes dozens of times, before the herd finally scattered. Imagine the pressure. One shot, no warning, no second chances to dial it in. This was cold-bore accuracy at extreme distances, where a miss didn't just mean failure, it meant losing the entire opportunity. And that's the difference. While the cowboy rode and worked the land, the buffalo hunter mastered it from afar, turning distance into an advantage and silence into a weapon. The West didn't invent long-range killing, but it perfected how to survive with it. After the Civil War, men who had already learned the art of precision shooting carried those skills into a new kind of battlefield. Veterans of units like Burden's sharpshooters didn't just disappear when the war ended. Many drifted west, becoming scouts, guides, and fighters in conflicts where the rules were far less defined and far less forgiving. Out here, there were no clean lines, no uniforms standing in formation. Instead, survival depended on distance, concealment, and timing. A scout might climb into high ground, rimrock overlooking a valley, or a ridge above a narrow coulee, waiting, watching, below, movement. A patrol, a group, sometimes larger than anything he could face head-on. But that was never the point. He didn't need to win a battle. He needed to control it. One well-placed shot from cover could stop a column in its tracks, another, and the enemy didn't just take casualties, they froze, unsure where the threat was coming from. This was harassment fire, designed to pin, confuse, and dominate space without ever exposing yourself. Natural cover, scrub brush, rock formations, shallow ravines became tools, shaping invisible kill zones where movement meant risk. Forget the idea of a fair fight on the frontier. Fairness got you killed. There were no dramatic showdowns here, no men squaring off at high noon. The real fight happened at a distance, often against an unseen enemy, where patience and positioning mattered more than speed or courage. And in a land with no backup, no reinforcements, and no second chances, the smartest shot was the one they never saw coming. Here's the part no one likes to admit. The average cowboy wasn't a crack shot, not even close. Out on the frontier, ammunition wasn't cheap, and practice wasn't a pastime. Every round cost money, and most cowboys were working men, not professional marksmen. Their revolvers were tools of convenience, good for scaring off predators, dealing with the occasional threat, or simply worn as a symbol of status, but precision shooting at long range. That wasn't their world, the image. We've been sold the 1,000-yard cowboy dropping targets with ease comes from somewhere else entirely. Shows like Buffalo Bill's Wild West built legends on spectacle. Trick shooters would shatter glass balls in midair, or knock objects from impossible distances. But what audiences didn't see was the method behind the magic. Many of those demonstrations used birdshot, spreading pellets that dramatically increased the chances of a hit. It looked like precision. It wasn't even with the right rifle. There were limits. Black powder fouled barrels quickly. After just a handful of shots, residue would build up, affecting accuracy and consistency. A rifle that was dead on for the first few rounds could start drifting unpredictably unless it was cleaned, something not always possible in the middle of a fight or a hunt. So, while long-range shooting absolutely existed, true mastery was rare. It belonged to a small group of specialists, men like Billy Dixon or Frank Gruard, who had the skill, experience, and discipline to make those shots count. And that raises an even deeper question. If only a few men could do it, what did it really take to become one of them? If you really want to understand how the West was fought, you have to stop thinking about duels and start thinking about distance. Because whenever violence broke out on the frontier, the idea of a fair fight didn't last long. Take the conflict known as the Johnson County War. On paper, it was cattlemen versus settlers. In reality, it became a standoff shaped by terrain and rifle fire. Men dug into rifle pits, using earth, wood, and elevation to turn simple homesteads into fortified positions. From those positions, they didn't charge, they fired carefully. Deliberately, every shot meant to pin the enemy down before they could ever get close. And this wasn't unique years earlier. During the infamous Northfield raid, something similar played out in an entirely different setting. When the James Younger gang tried to rob the town, they expected intimidation. Instead, they met resistance from civilians who grabbed hunting rifles and took positions in upper windows. From those elevated vantage points, townspeople picked off attackers in the street, turning a robbery into a chaotic, collapsing firefight. The gang never stood a chance once the shooting started from above and beyond. What connects these moments isn't courage or chaos, it's distance. The moment a rifle was shouldered and aimed from cover, everything changed. The fight stopped being about honor or bravado and became about survival. Walls, windows, ridges, and trenches all turned into tools of control, creating invisible buffers where one side could strike without being struck. Because out here, the code of the West didn't survive contact with a rifle. And once that 300-yard gap opened up, the rules of engagement were rewritten entirely. When we strip away the myths, the spinning revolvers and the Hollywood duels, what's left is something far more interesting and far more real. The Wild West didn't produce snipers in the modern sense, and the average cowboy was never the sharpshooter pop culture likes to imagine. But what it did create was something just as important, a foundation for American long-range marksmanship. It began with the tools, the heavy buffalo rifles of the plains, built for power, not speed, gave skilled shooters the ability to reach out across staggering distances. Then came the method, the stand, where patience replaced pursuit and a single well-placed shot could shape the movement of an entire herd. And finally, the mindset shift, from face-to-face confrontation to something colder, quieter, and far more tactical. Not a duel, but an ambush shaped by distance. Out here, success wasn't about drawing first. It was about waiting longer. A man might lie in the grass for hours, watching heat shimmer and wind shift, waiting for a single moment when everything aligned. No crosshairs like we know today, no modern ballistics calculators, just instinct, experience, and the ability to control breath and trigger at exactly the right second. That's the real legacy of the frontier marksman. He wasn't a legend in a showman's coat or a gunfighter walking down Main Street. He was a laborer of patience, armed with a heavy rifle and a mindset built for restraint, not spectacle, and in many ways that low-tech, high-skill reality shaped everything that came after. Because long before modern snipers had scopes, rangefinders, or advanced optics, the principles were already born on the open plains, where distance was survival, and the quietest shot often mattered the most.